I would like to talk about some problems that I have with Smite. Um, a couple of things that a problem I have is pretty much I play Artemis because she's practically a basic god. I love playing her, and she's basic. She doesn't have too much, she don't have too little. And what I learned over the years of playing Smite is that Artemis isn't OP based on her kit or stuff like that. She's OP, or she becomes either powered, overpowered, or underpowered based on the current item builds or the current patch. Say, for example, I'll give you an example. When Artemis aspect first was released, her aspect was not overpowered. It wasn't broken. It wasn't too good. It was actually a lot of people seeing it as kind of bad because she lost her fundamental thing when that was her root. Now, a little, I think a little while after it was released, what they did was they nerfed her actual aspect and her traps. So no longer at level one did your traps do a lot of damage. In fact, it was significantly nerfed because they said that it was clearing too good, which doesn't make any sense. You see, Anubis and Artemis, I'm going to compare them both. Anubis doesn't have an escape, just like how Artemis doesn't have an escape. But there's a reason why he doesn't have an escape. He wants you to get close. He wants to fight you up close because he can root you, he can CC you, he can hit you with a lot of damage, and that's practically his own niche. Artemis has to have a reason as well. So if getting close to Artemis gets you a CC root into an auto or to a three, whatever it would be, into her hitting her autos on you, doesn't really matter what it is. That's the reason why she doesn't have an escape because she wants you to get close. You want to get close to Artemis. You want to fight, etc. Now, I noticed that in a recent patch that Artemis is not doing too well because of the fact that people can just jump on her and there's so much damage in the game and they can just burst her down instantly. So it doesn't help when when developers just nerf her damage and decrease it to where it doesn't clear as well. On top of that, right after they did that nerf, they also did something else. They also decreased how much healing that she gets per tick from her traps. They didn't just do it for her. They did it overall um, for anybody that had healing abilities. So Aphrodite, um, Amaterasu, everybody that had healing abilities, they practically nerfed. And that's what I'm trying. That's the point I'm trying to make about the overall um, OPness of Artemis. It's basically based off the patches and things they do in game. So what that did was they took away her damage and then they took away how much healing she gets per tick. Okay. Also, even when you build strength, her strength scaling for healing was decreased as well. So it was nerfed as well. So even though if you build all strength, how much healing you get from the traps is very irrelevant. It's so small and you won't even notice it. Another thing they did was they decreased the lifesteal. So another reason why you would want to use Artemis traps is because lifesteal. So it would hit multiple enemies, doing a lot of damage, and that goes really well with lifesteal. So when they nerfed the healing and the damage, then they nerfed the actual overall lifesteal, it practically made Artemis 1, or in this case, in her aspect, almost virtually useless. And there's another problem. Let's say, for example, you're in Conquest, if you lay down some traps,
Get out of this.
because the enemy can see
Get
them,
out of this.
they know where they're at, and what they'll do, they'll just proc them. They'll proc the traps, and they'll walk over them, proc them, and that's the end of it. Like you lose all your traps. So it's practically putting you in a very bad position where, let's say, the reason why um, you would use your traps to put on the map is to have some type of way to control the map a little bit. So if an enemy guy jumps on you, you can move in the direction of the trap, hoping that it will root them. Or let's say if it's so bad charges towards you, you can put a trap down in front of you, and he'll get stuck in the actual trap instead of actually pulling you if you time it right. But in aspect, you don't really get that. So you lose that capability and you lose something else. Well, you can't just put the traps down because if you put the traps down, the enemy can proc them practically making it almost worthless. Not only that, it makes you and forces you to hold on to the trap even longer. So it's really you lose the ability to just lay traps down and have them sitting there, which makes it almost pointless. And the way you can fix that is you can turn her three into something like Pele's one. Or I mean, you can turn her one to something similar to Pele. It becomes a charge ability, which would make more sense. I know they reduced the cooldown, but honestly, I would have had that anyway if I had maxed out my one. And typically speaking, when using Artemis Aspect, that's the first thing I do is max out her one so it can do more damage. So either way you look at it, I'm going to get that increased cooldown regardless. Some people would max out her three still, but typically, ideally, you want to max out her one when it comes to using her aspect. So another problem, as I stated before, is that when you can't actually have your traps on the map the way you want, it's kind of hard to set them up. Let's say, for example, if you want to set up these traps like in a bush, or if you want to set it up to where it could be like, let's say in a jungle between like, I guess the rocks and openings that you have, the pathways that you can go back to your lane, so that way you can set up like an ambush type of thing. Well, if you do so, and let's say for example you are over here, you have to walk all the way over there just to try to pull the enemy over there, and they know what you're doing, so it wouldn't work. So it's so many negatives with just this one um, use of her aspects, this one change. Not only that, when Artemis came into the game, they nerfed her too, which didn't make any sense. You see, Artemis always had an attack speed increase of 80% at max level, but they reduced it to 65, which didn't make any sense. And then on top of reducing, you have guys like on here who gets a 100% increase on his attack speed with his aspect, which is practically that's OP on him when he first came out was OP, and it still kind of is. People don't really use it that much, but it's still OP. Now, I'm hoping that maybe this video will reach them. They can, developers can see this, because it's really just inconvenience. Just look at this. Look how much damage that the guy would take if they just walked and they trapped and walked out. So he's gonna patrol.
Get up
Right?
this.
Took virtually no damage. 70 20 damage versus 70. No, 30. He walked back into it, but it would have been just 20. So 2 ticks of the trap versus the full tick effect. That means that if you are trying to lay your traps down for the enemy minion gods, which I'll show you right now.
Get out this.
Get them to come. If you're trying to lay it on your traps for the enemy minion gods to come, if you lay them right there, the enemy god can just walk in and trigger the trap, and bam, there's nothing you can do about it, because now you have to wait for your one to get on cooldown, and you practically lose the effectiveness of your actual one. Using your three to try to clear away is an option, but it still puts you at a great disadvantage, because you could have used your one to root the enemy if they try to come after you. You lose that capability. So it's just so many negative variables of the things they've done with her aspect, and the overall nerfs done to the actual game itself has greatly and dramatically affected Artemis' performance in her aspect mode. In fact, I have never came across anybody else in Smite who has used her aspect and has done well. Nobody has ever done it. I'm not Zapman. Nobody who's used Artemis in Rank Conquest has done well with Artemis. And they all have the same answer. It's because there's so much damage in the game, and it's just, you jump on her and she dies, pretty much. And everybody has the same opinion. I have that opinion, but still, I make it work in the games that I play. It's practically like Artemis goes from being a god that locks you down to Artemis that has to be a passive god and wait to mid game or late game to be effective, and that's not really fun. The thing is, even if you wanted to wait to mid game, that's only a if that's an iffy situation because there's a 9 times out of 10 or 8 times out of 10. If you're not doing good, your team will surrender. So most games in casual, and I would say 5 out of 10 ranked games, people will just either AFK in their base or they would just F6. They would just quit because they don't want to go to late game and wait to see what you can do because of the fact that they know you're getting jumped on, they know you're behind, etc. So that puts the people who play Artemis at a very great disadvantage. They can't have an actual smooth game. I'm just hoping that maybe possibly that Hi-Res can look at this and possibly do something about this. The way they can fix the aspect system, I think that aspects, they're really good. And what they can do is they can have three different aspects. You can have one aspect, which can be a tactical aspect. You can have one meant for offense and one meant for defense. And the person can choose what type of variant of aspect they want to use. Each aspect will change the way the god plays. Instead of trying to do one aspect that does a big overall change to the god, they can break that up into three different aspects. This will allow that OP feeling not to be so OP. Like for Atlas, that would have worked perfect for Atlas. Say, like, for example, they made an offense aspect where only a little bit of a change was made to his kit, but it was a big offensive change where he would do more damage. That would have worked. They could have did something where he could have became more tactical, and that's where he throws his little spear around the map and it does some damage but not as much damage. They could have broken it up like that instead of just doing one big aspect change and making it straight up OP or unbalanced. And that's my whole point and purpose of this. I'm hoping I have other people who would agree with me, and if you guys do agree, just please leave a comment and just hopefully we can get to resolve, because not only is the aspect system unbalanced, it's just becoming unfun. Like, all these new aspects are greatly, significantly better than the aspects that were originally, released. And they did say they would go back and practically revisit those. And I'm glad these aspects are fun for those who are playing it, but then the game becomes unfun for everybody else because of the fact that they're using a broken god. And practically the only safe mode you can go into, so you don't have to run into that bullcrap, is rank matches, because you get banned that god, so you don't have to worry about that. But if you're trying to play casual, you can forget it. You guarantee to face against somebody with using that broken aspect, and that's the reason why people are having and people didn't are not having fun with Smite, is because of Atlas as well. That's a great example. Every match you did in Conquest, people ran the Atlas aspect build, and it just made every match unbearable. It was just completely unbearable, and that's just my point. Like, if we could just get this fixed, I think the game would be a lot better. I don't know what you guys think.